Okay, the next story is a fan favorite. It's by a very popular author, Alan Gratz. So if you have read his books in the past, you definitely want to check this out. It's called Ground Zero, and it is a novel about 9/11. What's really interesting about this book is that it offers two perspectives from two very different sides of the story. So we have September 11th, 2001, New York City. Brandon is visiting his dad at work on the 107th floor of the World Trade Center. Out of nowhere, an airplane slams into the tower, creating a fiery nightmare of terror and confusion. And Brandon is in the middle of it all. Can he survive and escape? And then the second perspective begins on September 11th, 2019. So this is years afterwards, and this takes place in Afghanistan. Rashmina has grown up in the shadow of war, but she dreams of peace and progress. When a battle erupts in her village, Rashmina stumbles upon a wounded American soldier named Taz. Should she help Taz and put herself and her family in mortal danger? So I have to read this to you. This isn't necessarily, this is what someone wrote about the book. That Alan Gratz delivers a pulse-pounding and unforgettable take on history and hope, revenge and fear, and the stunning links between the past and the present. So as historians, I think this is such an interesting take because you're seeing the multiple perspectives, how history can have hardship and pain, but also areas of hope and progress. And so through these two stories, you are seeing that. You're seeing how revenge and fear can be on one side, but then there's also opportunities for hope on the other. So the first chapter begins with Brandon's perspective, and it's called How We Survive. Brandon Chavez was in trouble. He should have been in school this morning, taking a seat by the window and sharing a new skateboard magazine with his friend. Instead, he sat next to his dad on a crowded subway train headed from Brooklyn into Manhattan. Brandon wasn't allowed to go to school today. He was suspended. Shoom! Brandon jumped as the train burst from its underground tunnel into the full light of day for its climb to the Manhattan Bridge. It was bright blue, clear September morning, and he squinted from the sudden sun. Beside him, his father folded up the newspaper he'd been reading. Okay, Brandon, what are we going to talk about? Or when are we going to talk about this? Brandon didn't want to talk about getting suspended. He hadn't talked during dinner last night or at breakfast this morning or while he and his dad had waited for the subway. Now Brandon could feel the silence like an invisible thing that had squeezed in between them on the seat and was pushing them apart. His dad turned to face him. Leo Chavez was a big man, but he had a stocky chest and strong arms. Brandon thought he would have made a good professional wrestler. There was a quiet power in his dad, and Brandon could feel the power directed at him now. I get a call at work from your school, and I'm thinking, is Brandon sick? Did he crack his head open again doing stunts on the playground? His dad said, but no. They're calling to tell me my son punched another kid in the nose. He deserved it, Brandon said. All his anger and frustration from yesterday came flooding back as he turned to his father. Cedric brought these Wolverine gloves to school, like from the X-Men movie, and Stuart Pendleton stole them and wouldn't give them back. So you punched Stuart in the nose? He wasn't going to give them back. What was I supposed to do? Brandon's dad sighed. I don't know, Brandon. Talk to him? Tell a teacher or something? Talk to him? You could talk to a bully like Stuart Pendleton, and tell a teacher might have gotten Cedric his gloves back, but Stuart would have just beaten Brandon up later for tattling. You don't understand, Brandon told his dad. I understand enough to know that punching him wasn't the answer, his dad said. The principal told me that the other boy you were trying to help, his toy got broken in the fight. Brandon brightened. He had a plan to fix that part at least. But before he could explain, his dad kept talking. I had to leave work early yesterday, Brandon. You know we can't afford for me to miss any hours. Things are tight enough as they are. Brandon nodded and stared out the train window. That was why he was going into work with his dad this morning. Brandon's father couldn't take a sick day, and there was nobody else to stay home and watch him. The Q train rattled up onto the Manhattan Bridge, and Brandon saw the World Trade Center in the distance. It was hard to miss. The gray, rectangular twin towers stood more than twice as tall as the other skyscrapers around them at the southern end of Manhattan. The two towers were almost identical, except for the huge red and white antenna on the roof of the North Tower. That was where Brandon's dad worked. He was a kitchen manager at a restaurant called Windows on the World at the very top of the North Tower on the 107th floor. So, if you like Alan Gratz, if you want to know more about 9/11, especially what it was like to be there in the towers, and then to learn about what this event led to, I definitely recommend this one.